We didn't look up to it because, like, we football players. We were real big.
Yeah, we wanted to be football players. You know, we all played for our high school.
Yeah.
But, you know.
You think you know how Buffy from the Fat Boys died? You're wrong. There's a truth that's been buried for over 30 years. A truth that has nothing to do with the 450 pounds, nothing to do with the flu, and nothing to do with collapsing at 3 a.m. in a home studio. The real truth is this. The industry turned his body into a product, then threw him away the second that product stopped selling. Darren Buffy Robinson, the Human Beatbox, the man who once made 6,000 people at Radio City Music Hall lose their minds using nothing but his mouth. 28 years old, 450 pounds, 3 o'clock in the morning, December 10th, 1995, a quiet house in Queens. He stood up, tried to climb onto the studio chair, and fell. His brother tried to breathe life back into him. The same lungs that used to create an entire drum kit. This time, there was nothing left. This wasn't just a tragedy. It was the consequence of a brand built on a man's body. A scandal that destroyed everything, and an industry that happily consumed the very people who made it rich. Today, we're going to tell the full story of Buffy and the Fat Boys, the parts they tried to bury. If you're into the dark side of hip-hop history, the tragedies and scandals nobody wants to talk about, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the notification bell, because this one goes darker than anything you've heard before. Chapter 1, The Birth of a Body Brand. They weren't born stars. They were born big. East New York, Brooklyn, early 1980s. The kind of neighborhood where the elevators smelled like piss and fried chicken, where the streetlights flickered like they were tired of watching the same stories repeat. Darren Robinson was already heavier than most of the grown men on his block by the time he turned 14. Mark Morales and Damon Wembley weren't far behind. 3 oversized black boys walking the hallways of George Gershwin Junior High like moving targets. Kids didn't even try to hide it. "Yo, look at the 3 refrigerators coming," somebody would yell from the second-floor landing. Laughter would bounce off the lockers. One afternoon in the fall of 1981, a skinny kid named Tyrell stepped in front of Darren near the stairwell and patted his stomach like he was checking a drum. "Damn, Robinson, you swallow a whole couch this morning?" Darren didn't swing. He just stared at him until Tyrell's smile started to crack. Mark came up behind him, voice low. "Leave it, man. Ain't worth it." Damon sucked his teeth. "I'm tired of this shit. Every day, every single day." They kept walking, but something had already started hardening inside Darren. That night he sat on the edge of his bed in the dark, headphones on, listening to the breaks from old James Brown records his older cousin used to play. He started mimicking the kicks with his mouth. At first it was just noise, then it became tighter, deeper. He stayed up until 3 in the morning trying to make his throat produce a bass line that felt like it could shake the walls. By the winter of 1982, the 3 of them were inseparable. They called themselves the Disco 3, mostly as a joke at first. They would practice in the stairwell after school when the building was almost empty. Darren would close his eyes and let the sounds roll out. Thick kicks, sharp snares, hi-hats that snapped like fingers. Mark and Damon would trade rhymes over it, laughing when they messed up, getting serious when it started locking in. One February afternoon, the janitor, an old man named Mr. Lewis, stopped sweeping and just watched them for a full 2 minutes. "Y'all sound like a whole damn band," he said finally. "Where the speakers at?" Darren wiped sweat from his forehead and grinned for the first time that day. "Ain't no speakers, Mr. Lewis, just me." They started performing anywhere that would let them. Community center talent nights, park jams when the weather broke in the spring of 1983, a church basement on Linden Boulevard where the pastor's nephew ran a little open mic. Every time Darren opened his mouth, the room changed. People stopped talking. Grown men leaned forward. Girls who used to laugh at their size suddenly stared with something closer to respect. But the jokes never fully stopped. They just got quieter. Then came the night that split their lives in 2. May 23rd, 1983, Radio City Music Hall. The Tin Pan Apple After Dark Dance and Rap Contest, 6,000 seats filled. Coca-Cola money behind it, WBLS promoting it, Mr. Magic on the mic. The prize was a real recording contract, the kind that could pull 3 kids out of East New York for good. Backstage, the Disco 3 stood in a tight circle. Damon was breathing hard. "Y'all see how many people out there?" he whispered. "I think I'm gonna throw up." Mark adjusted the fat gold chain he had borrowed from his uncle. "We just do what we always do. Buffy drops the beat, we rhyme, that's it." Darren didn't say much. He just kept rolling his shoulders, warming up his lungs the way some boxers bounce on their toes. He had been practicing the same routine for 3 weeks straight in the stairwell until his throat burned. When they finally walked out under those lights, there was no DJ, no turntables, no tape, just 3 oversized teenagers and a single microphone. The crowd was already restless. Then Darren stepped to the front, closed his eyes, and opened his mouth. The first kick hit like a gunshot, then the snare. Then a rolling bass line that seemed impossible coming from a human body. 6,000 people went silent for half a second. Then the place exploded. People stood up on the seats. Someone in the 3rd row started screaming. Mr. Magic's mouth was open, but no words came out at first. They won first place that night. In the chaos afterward, while the other acts were still packing up, a tall white man with a Swiss accent pushed through the crowd and found them near the side exit. His name was Charles Stetler. He didn't congratulate them the way the other promoters did. He looked at them the way a man looks at a piece of land he already decided to buy. "You 3, he said, pointing at each of them in turn. "You don't need a DJ. You are the band, and the world is going to pay to watch you." He took them to Europe that summer on a short promotional run. The hotels were nicer than anything they had ever seen. The first morning in Zurich, room service brought up enough food for 6 people. By the time the bill came, it was $350 just for breakfast. Stetler looked at the receipt, then looked at the 3 of them still eating, and laughed out loud. "This," he said, tapping the paper, "this is the brand." Back in New York, at a loud party at the Roseland Ballroom in the late summer of 1983, Stetler made it official. The Disco 3 was dead. From that night forward, they would be the Fat Boys. The name was printed on flyers. It was spoken on the radio. It was written into the contracts. Stetler sat them down one afternoon in a small office on Broadway and spoke carefully. "The bigger you are, the more they will remember you. America already laughs at fat black kids, so we make them pay to laugh, and then we make them cheer. You understand?" Mark looked down at his hands. Damon just nodded. Darren stared out the window at the traffic and said nothing. They were 18 and 19 years old. Too young to see the trap being built around them in real time. The same bodies the world had mocked were now the product. The same size that had made them targets was about to make them famous. Stetler encouraged them to eat more on the road. Late-night diner runs after shows became part of the routine. The brand needed them large, visible, unmissable. And for a little while, it felt like winning. The crowds got bigger, the checks got thicker. People who used to laugh now asked for autographs. But every time Darren stepped on a scale in some hotel bathroom at 2 in the morning, the number climbed higher. And somewhere underneath the excitement, a quiet clock had already started ticking. They thought they had finally turned the joke around on the world. They had no idea the joke was still running, and the punchline was going to cost them everything. Chapter 2: The Peak and the Crossover Trap. By the middle of 1987, the Fat Boys were everywhere. 4 gold albums in a row. Arenas that used to feel too big now felt too small. Hollywood had already tasted them in Crush Groove. Television wanted them. Middle America knew their faces. And on August 14th of that year, 2 things dropped on the same day like a double explosion. Their 4th album, Crushin', and the movie Disorderlies. Crushin' went platinum. It was the only one that ever would. Wipeout, the collab with the Beach Boys, climbed to number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 2 in the United Kingdom. The single went platinum by itself. The film, a slapstick comedy where the 3 of them played the world's most chaotic orderlies in a Palm Beach mansion, pulled in more than $10 million on a $5 million budget. They were on Good Morning America. They were in Swatch commercials jumping out of helicopters. They were the first rap group treated like real brand ambassadors, selling products to people who still thought hip-hop was a fad. From the outside, it looked like total victory. From the inside, it felt like the beginning of the end. Prince Marky D would say it years later without blinking. "I'll be absolutely honest with you. Crushin' was our worst album to do, even though it was our most successful. We felt like it was the beginning of our downfall, specifically because of Wipeout. The idea for the song did not come from them. It came from Charles Stetler on the first day of shooting, Disorderlies. Run DMC had just blown the doors off with Walk This Way. Stetler wanted the same kind of lightning. He walked onto the set and told them they were going to cover the old Surfara's surf rock instrumental with actual Beach Boys on it. At first, the three of them pushed back hard. In a hotel room one night after a long day of filming, Marky sat on the edge of the bed listening to the original Wipeout on a boombox. He shook his head. "Man, we can't rap to that," he said. "That shit don't even sound like hip-hop." Cool Rockski paced near the window. "Feels like somebody else's record." Buffy just sat there, rolling a beat under his breath, trying to find a pocket that didn't exist yet. But the producers slowed the track down, dropped a heavy Miami bass underneath it, and brought Brian Wilson, Mike Love, and Bruce Johnston into the studio. Suddenly, the thing started moving. They recorded it as the last song on the album. When it hit big. The problem was what came with the hit. Their old audience, the kids who had memorized every bar of jailhouse rap, the ones who packed the Fresh Fest shows, started looking at them differently. The Beach Boys collab felt like a betrayal to some. The movie felt like a minstrel show to others. They were no longer the hungry Brooklyn kids who could fill a room with nothing but lungs and rhymes. They were becoming a novelty act that white America could laugh with and then forget. One night in the fall of 1987, after a show in the Midwest, the three of them sat in a nearly empty hotel restaurant at 2:30 in the morning. Everything else was closed. The only food available was whatever the late-night kitchen could throw together. Burgers, fries, more burgers. Buffy stared at the plate in front of him like it was both a reward and a sentence. Marky leaned forward, voice low. "You hear what they're saying in the streets? That we sold out? That we ain't hip-hop no more?" Cool Rockski rubbed his face. "Stetler says the money is in the crossover, says the core fans will come back once the checks get bigger." Buffy didn't answer right away. He just kept eating. The brand needed them big. The name on the posters needed them big. The whole machine was built on the spectacle of three oversized black kids who could make the world smile. Nobody in the industry was asking if their hearts could keep up. Nobody was asking what happened when the only thing open after a show was a drive-through at 4 in the morning, night after night, city after city. The weight kept climbing. Of course it did. There was a darker rumor that started circulating in certain industry circles around that time. The kind of quiet story that never made the magazines but traveled fast between managers and promoters. It said that Stetler had once joked in a private meeting that the fatter they got, the more authentic the brand became. That the moment one of them started looking too healthy, the whole image would crack. Whether the joke was real or exaggerated didn't matter. The effect was the same. The three of them were locked inside a product that demanded they keep expanding while the calendar kept moving. In October of that same year, the pressure showed itself in public. A concert in Bakersfield was canceled at the last minute. Fans who had waited 90 minutes past showtime spotted the promoter trying to leave with the night's receipts. They dragged him out of his Mercedes, beat him bloody, crushed the car, and turned it over in the street. Rocks and bottles flew at the police. It was chaos. The Fat Boys were not even there, but the story still attached itself to their name like smoke. Backstage, the laughs were getting thinner. On one morning show appearance, the producers surprised them with a tribute act called The Fat Girls, a gender-flipped joke version of themselves. The cameras rolled. The hosts grinned. Cool Rockski later said they really didn't like that kind of stuff. They were serious about what they were doing. But the world had already decided they were the joke. By the time Coming Back Hard Again dropped in 1988 and still went gold, the formula was already fading. Hip-hop itself was changing. NWA was rewriting the rules with pure rage. Public Enemy was raising fists. The Fat Boys, fun, family-friendly crossover pioneers, suddenly felt like relics of a softer era. The same doors they had helped kick open were now being walked through by artists who looked nothing like them and sounded nothing like them. They were standing at the absolute peak of their commercial success. Platinum plaques, movie money, international charts, brand deals. And right there, in the middle of all that light, the ground under their feet had already started to crack. They just couldn't hear it yet over the sound of the applause. Chapter 3, the 1990s scandal, the killing blow. By 1990, the hits had already slowed. The platinum peak of Crushin' felt like a memory. Hip-hop itself had hardened. The Fat Boys, once the smiling face of the culture, were starting to look like leftovers from a softer time. Then came the night that finished them. August 1990. Honeybrook Township, Pennsylvania. A small place most people had never heard of, tucked into Chester County outside Philadelphia. A party in a mobile home. What happened there that night would end up in police reports, court documents, and newspaper headlines across the country. A 14-year-old girl was sexually abused. Darren Buffy Robinson was there. According to the charges that followed, he recorded the incident on video. His brother Curtis, who managed him, was there. A bodyguard named Pell Ponyboy Wimley was there. A local man named Edward Kelso was also charged. Police later obtained the tape. On December 7, 1990, the arrests came. Buffy, then 23 years old, was charged with sexual abuse of a minor, corruption of minors, and conspiracy. Curtis and the bodyguard faced related charges. They surrendered to state police in Coatesville and were released on bond. In interviews in the days that followed, the men claimed the girls at the party had said they were 18. Whether that claim was believed or not, the legal system moved forward. In May 1991, in Chester County Court, Buffy pleaded guilty to sexual abuse of children. Judge Charles B. Smith sentenced him to 2 years of probation and a $10,000 fine. He did not serve prison time. 3 others involved also pleaded guilty to related morals charges. A child was harmed. That fact sits at the center of everything that followed and cannot be softened. The man who had once made 6,000 people at Radio City Music Hall lose their minds with nothing but his mouth was now a name in police files. The group that had sold itself as fun, safe, family-friendly, the one parents let their kids watch, the one that did Swatch commercials and morning show appearances, collapsed under the weight of the story. There was no recovering the brand. The smile that had opened doors for them became impossible to trust. Prince Marky D had already been watching the group drift. The crossover records, the forced pop covers, the feeling that they were no longer making the music they started with. All of it had been building. The scandal was the final cut. That same year, he walked away for good. He left the Fat Boys behind and began building a second life as a producer and songwriter. Within a few years, he would craft Real Love for Mary J. Blige, write for Mariah Carey and Jennifer Lopez, and step into a career that no longer carried the name or the shadow of the group. He never really looked back. What remained of the Fat Boys tried to continue. An album called Mac Daddy came out in 1991. It barely registered. The charts ignored it. The industry moved on. The world that had once packed arenas for them now had a reason to turn away and feel justified doing it. Buffy was left carrying the heaviest part of the fall. 23 years old when the charges hit. The same body that the brand had demanded stay large was still large. The same lungs that had once powered an entire rhythm section were still his, but the stages were gone. The invitations stopped. The phone calls changed. The man who had been everywhere suddenly had nowhere to stand. In the years that followed, he tried to work. He tried to record. He tried to believe a comeback was still possible. But the scandal sat on everything like a permanent stain. The Fat Boys had been built on being lovable. Once that image shattered, there was no second version of them the market wanted. A child was harmed. A career that had already been fading was buried. A group that once represented something bright and new became a cautionary story whispered in industry circles. After the scandal, one member left and never returned, and Buffy began the slow disappearance that would end 5 years later in a quiet house in Queens, still trying to make music no one was waiting for. The beat he had given hip-hop kept playing in other people's records. The man who made it was already being erased. Chapter 4. The Final Years. Isolation, 450 pounds, and an empty studio. After the scandal and the quiet exit of Prince Marky D, the spotlight did not just dim. It went out. Mark Morales walked away and built something new. He stepped behind the boards and started producing. Within a few years, he would craft Real Love for Mary J. Blige, a song that still stops rooms when it comes on. He wrote for Mariah Carey. He wrote for Jennifer Lopez. He moved into a second life that no longer carried the weight of the Fat Boys name. He proved there was a way out. Buffy never found one. Darren Robinson disappeared from public view. No interviews, no appearances, no more morning shows or movie sets or screaming crowds. The man who had once been everywhere simply stopped existing in the places that used to demand him. What remained was a quiet residential neighborhood in Rosedale, Queens, right on the edge of Nassau County. A house, a home studio, the low hum of equipment instead of the roar of arenas. This was where he landed. According to those closest to him, he was still working, still trying. He was attempting to lose weight, slowly, privately. He was putting together tracks for a possible Fat Boys reunion album that never fully materialized. The dream had not completely died inside him. He still believed there might be a way back, even if the industry had already closed the door and locked it. There was also a son now, Quentin Robinson, born around 1990 to Buffy and Lenise Walters, the woman who would later become known as the rapper Queen Pen. For a few years, Buffy got to be something other than a performer or a cautionary tale. He got to be a father. In the middle of everything that had collapsed, that fact mattered, but his body was failing him in ways that could no longer be ignored. By 1995, he weighed around 450 pounds. He had been diagnosed with lymphedema, a condition that caused severe fluid buildup and swelling. A respiratory flu had been dragging on for weeks, the kind of sickness a healthier body might have fought off, but his could not. The same size that Charles Stetler had once encouraged, the same size the brand had required, the same size that had made him famous, was now working against every system inside him. Still, he kept going into the studio. On the night of December 9th, 1995, Buffy was recording. His brother Curtis was with him. The flu had been wearing him down, but he wanted to finish the song. There was no big session, no label people, no cameras. Just a man in his home studio trying to lay down tracks the world was no longer waiting for. Sometime around 3 o'clock in the morning on December 10th, he stood up from the couch and tried to climb onto a studio chair. He fell. Curtis was right there. He tried to help. He tried mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. The same breath that Buffy had once used to create entire drum patterns, now being forced back into him by his older brother. The lungs that had given hip-hop one of its earliest and purest rhythmic voices could not respond. Darren Robinson, the Human Beatbox, died at 28 years old. The comeback album was never finished. The reunion never happened. The news barely made a ripple compared to the noise that had once surrounded him. The industry that had cheered the spectacle of his size had long since moved on to newer, leaner, angrier sounds. There were no emergency meetings, no public campaigns, no sudden concern for the man whose body had been part of the product. They had once encouraged him to gain weight because it sold. They had booked the tours that left only drive-through food available at 2 and 3 in the morning. They had built an entire brand on the visual of 3 oversized black kids who could make people smile. And when that body finally gave out in a quiet house in Queens, almost no one was left standing nearby except his brother trying to breathe life back into him. The music he made in those final sessions mostly stayed unheard. The tracks sat in the studio like unfinished letters. The man who had once filled Radio City Music Hall with nothing but his mouth left the world with far less noise than he had entered it with. In the years that followed, the samples of his early work kept circulating. Other artists built on the foundation he helped create. Beatboxers who came after him still carried pieces of the language he helped invent. But the person himself, the kid from East New York who turned mockery into a sound, the young man who became a brand, the father trying to work through illness in a home studio, faded into the kind of silence that only arrives after the industry has extracted everything it can use. He was 28, he weighed 450 pounds. He was still trying to make music when his heart stopped. And the people who had once needed him to stay big were nowhere near the room when the weight finally became too much to carry. Chapter 5. Legacy and the Questions No One Asked. The beat outlived him. Darren Robinson's Human Beatbox has been sampled more than 180 times. The Roots, Dougie Fresh, Beastie Boys, Method Man. They all reached back and took pieces of the sound he created with nothing but his mouth. Every modern beatboxer still speaks a language he helped invent. Prince Marky D escaped the wreckage. He produced Mary J. Blige's Real Love, wrote for Mariah Carey and Jennifer Lopez, and built a second career. On February 18, 2021, one day before his 53rd birthday, he died of congestive heart failure at 52. Another heart that could not carry the weight. Only Cool Rock Ski remains. In 2023, he accepted the Long Island Music Hall of Fame induction on behalf of the group. He is still pushing for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Recognition that should have come decades ago is still being fought for. The question hangs in the air. When the thing that made you famous is the same thing killing you, who is responsible? The industry turned their size into a brand, encouraged the wait, booked the tours that left only drive-through food at 3 a.m. and cashed the checks. When the bodies finally gave out, almost no one was left in the room. Buffy died at 28, 450 pounds, still trying to record. Marky D died at 52, both taken by their hearts. The beat is still playing. The men who made it paid the full price. Darren Robinson did not just die because he was heavy. He died because his body was turned into a product. Because no one protected the health the brand demanded. Because a scandal finished what the industry had already started. And because when the lights went out, almost no one remembered. If this story hit you, leave a comment. Do you think Buffy was treated fairly? Like, subscribe, hit the bell. More buried hip-hop stories are coming. Never forget the real cost of the spotlight.